Oh, we are live on YouTube. Hello, hello. Welcome to the business of hope. I'm one of the podcasters, Ashley Chancellor, here with,
I'm Matt Harless. Thank you so much for joining us.
yes, and this is the business of hope. It is our podcast to start discussing true healing. True healing begins with hope. Hope begins with you, and here is hope. So, where are you? And we're going to start sharing with everyone how Matt and I show up to our meetings every day and how we want to encourage other nurses, healers, caregivers to show up for themselves and for each other. So,
Thank you.
Matt, why don't you start us off today with just telling us how you're coming in today?
When I look at that sticker, I feel like a 9 or a 10 today. I have been so excited about the day and I'm ready to lead with hope. And I have gone from every different level over the last few weeks and months for real. And I spent quite a bit of time in the red area when didn't know what was going to come out of it. And I think, for years I've been trying to find a way to come over this burnout and moral injury. And it wasn't until I started exercising this hope assessment on a daily basis that I really felt like I could generate some momentum in my own life and overcome it. And as a result of that, Ashley and I have been working together and we really feel like we have something that we want to share with everybody. So, Ashley, where are you coming in today?
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm coming in about a 7 today. Truthfully, I'm very excited to be here. Very excited to be sharing everything that we've been working on. But truthfully, um, my energy is just a little bit on the lower side. Even though my excitement and joy for this project is high, my personal energy is a little bit low. So I'm here. I'm showing up, and I'm excited to lead and help where I can. But also, I'm honoring those boundaries. And so, I also, we both Matt and I have spent time at the bedside with patients in all different various stages of healing. And we have developed this hope assessment scale here. And much like a pain assessment scale, that kind of doesn't always even give clarity in itself, but it is a way for you to self assess where your pains are. And we've taken that and we want to self assess where's your hope at? It's okay to have none, but what do you do when you have none? And so that's what we've built here at the Business of Hope. Matt, you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, I'm actually going to share my screen. I want to show you guys what we've built, okay? And that's not it, but be patient.
We'll get there.
And I had it up and now it's gone. So we have a website. It's called hopeassessment.org. I hope you see it. The homepage is just a little introduction. We both fell in love with Todd Otten and his teaser for this Suck It Up Buttercup, and it really that whole video is there, and what they're talking about is just how healthcare workers, doctors, everybody involved, were just expected to deal with this crisis in one room, and then a patient dies or whatever, and then you walk in 10 seconds, you walk into the next room, and you have to be pleasant and instead of dealing with maybe the stress of what's going on, and we're just required to set up further and further expectations. We talk a little bit about, our vision. I just want you to kind of see that we have this page, but I want to get into the assessment because that's really what we want to talk about. On page 2 of the website, we explain the assessment, and it's meant to be a PDF, but even if you can't open it as a PDF, you can save the image and print it as a Word document. And maybe you don't have the color, but we really want to go through each of the levels. Level 1 and 2 is red because it's really that crisis, overwhelm. You realize the suicide rates on healthcare workers is standard is over double of what it is for the general population. And inside healthcare, the suicide rates go higher for physicians and higher for the unlicensed techs. So, like we're looking at the whole entire healthcare system. If you notice down at the bottom, we have 3 different assessments. The first one is the one that we kind of push the most, but that's just how you identify where you are. And a lot of people I think don't realize that they're overwhelmed and they don't realize they're in crisis until maybe they get so despaired that they think about ending their own lives. But immediately in the second section, we go to seeking professional help and support. And we feel like people that are in those most dire circumstances, they need to know like where the resources are. And we have a page on the website for resources, and of course, there's the suicide hotline. I think it's 998 or 988. I always forget, but there's a number that you can call. Whenever I've handed out my stickers, I've given them all to my coworkers. If any of you here, I really am grateful that you came. But like everybody has one of these, and I've told them like if you're ever suicidal, like I'll go with you to the emergency room because I think we've got to be there for each other, and that's what's so important. And the last one just kind of gives you a little bit more sense of what it's about, this frequent despair and just a complete lack of hope. Uh, Ashley, I think you've experienced that, haven't you? Where you tell people about hope and they straight up laugh at you.
Yes, yes. It's been an interesting journey as we grow this little baby of ours and start talking about it. And I don't think I've left a single conversation with someone yet across the spectrum, inside of healthcare, outside of healthcare, alternative, holistic, naturopath, and at the end of the conversation, they really are just like, wow, this is something powerful. But at first, the thought of hope seems to strike people a little bit as silly or frivolous, or I've even gotten laughed at and said it was a waste of time to have hope. And I think that just speaks volumes about where we are as a society, and rightly so. And I think it speaks volumes to the things that we've been through, and I think it speaks volumes to say about how we're all walking around.
Yeah.
And
And maybe if you're laughing at the concept or you don't see that it's beneficial at all to you, then maybe you're just not ready, or maybe you're just so far trapped in this overwhelming crisis that your mind is just isn't open to it. And that's okay. I mean, we're here for the people that are looking for solutions. And I don't know, a couple years ago, I might have been one of the same people to just scoff at it because uh, I can just work harder, or I can just push through this, or this is just temporary. But, I came to a point where I just realized as much as I thought I could change the healthcare system, the hospital I was in, I realized I just kept hitting walls after walls, and I just realized I was kind of powerless to overcome. So that really leads us into the next level. When we talk about threes and fours, we go back to that first assessment, and it's just about seeking support. If you're here and you're interested, I hope you're at least a yellow. And if you're still a red, you need help. Like that's what we're going to push you towards. There's been days I've been a yellow, and the first thing I do is text Ashley, or I text my friends, or I reach out to my wife. I've got people in my life, and I feel like sometimes other people don't. And we want to, one of our missions is to start building some support groups so that people have an avenue and a place to go and seeking support. That's really the first thing you do to kind of level up. The next one, it just says in the middle, it talks about seeking lateral supports from peers and groups. Now, if you're being bullied on a unit, I don't think you want to go to that bully. Um, but if you have the opportunity to find somebody that's like-minded, you realize that's going to unlock a key growth tool for you. And there's everyone on your unit is dealing with the same struggles. And maybe they just don't know a way to open up and talk about it. And if you get one of our, go ahead.
well, I just want to add here, Matt, that in both the red and the yellow in this section, if you're in the red, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're suicidal. Sometimes it just
No.
means that there's other things going on. Maybe you've been questioning your health and something's been going on with that. And you're following up with a medical professional. You're seeking that professional support. Maybe this is a little bit of your mind and you're finally at a place that you are seeking therapy, or you're
Yeah.
seeking private coaching, that you are doing something that requires the aid of somebody else and it requires a little bit investment in yourself. And
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things that we skip over as nurses and we just brush off and we rush and tell of our patients, and truly it is something that's being lost across society, is that all of this is built on the foundation of that self-care of yourself.
Yeah.
And we are simply going to talk about hydration, nutrition, and rest. And so if you
Yeah.
find yourself in crisis mode, whether feeling suicidal, whether it's a health issue, whether you're just like kind of spiraling, maybe you just have too much on your plate, and maybe you're not acutely in crisis situation because you've had a terrible life, but maybe just today you feel like you can't give it all. It really does come back to the basics. Are you hydrated? What have you fed your body? And have you gotten outside to move it and have you rest? And then
Yeah.
from there, you start doing these things. You start investing and seeking that additional support. And I think the important thing to decipher between the crisis stage and the 3 to 4 stage where we're at is now you can get into group therapy. Now you don't need that specialized one-on-one. Now you don't necessarily need some diagnosis. Now you're kind of a little bit more self-aware. You have discernment. You're able to look around and make good judgment of the people around you and be inspired by the people around you. And I would say that's one of the biggest differences between that first and second stage versus the 3 and 4 in this transitional phase, just because, maybe you're not in crisis mode and you're feeling a little bit better, but support is still really important. And
Yeah.
Matt, like he said, he has his resources that he reached out to, and it actually took us a couple times of both of us reaching out and realizing, oh, well, of course you're in a 3 and 4 today, and you're responding accurately by reaching out.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's just important to think about those kind of things. If you're like, this doesn't work for me, shift your brain a little bit. Really put yourself in these shoes and think about how you show up on a day to day and show up for yourself.
Exactly. And that's why I feel it's so important to interact with this sticker on a daily basis. And it's like I have it on my laptop. I have one on the
Same.
back of my cell phone. You know how everybody has those water bottles, the big
Yeah.
giant Stanleys? I mean, on the website, we have a page for that. In the store, we have 3 stickers. And I'll just show it to you while we're here and talking about it. But you click on the store button and then you have to go to the store. We have all 3 of them here, and you see different prices. And I want you to show you why, because when you go to buy the sticker, you can get the small 2 inch by 2 inch, and it's only $1.67. And that's
That's
what we
this one.
have. That's what we have examples of. But the 3 inch by 3 inch is $1.86. So the big 6 by 6, I bought a few of those, and they're just giant. I mean, if you want something that big, I found it a little bulky and I didn't have a good place to stick them. So I think the 3 and 4 inch ones are kind of the sweet spot, but the smallest one is 2 and it's cheaper. So I wanted everybody to see that.
And if
Um,
you're thinking, where am I going to put this? I want you to think outside the box. We want this to start working in, nursing huddles, pre-shifts, but this can be used with your patients. This can be used with your children at home. This can be used with your husband at the end of the day. This can be used in any kind of support group that you're starting with neighbors. This can be used in every facet of life. And so having the sticker and putting it somewhere where you can see it and utilize it. And that's why we have, not only is it color coded, we have verbal descriptions and we have 3 stages of verbal descriptions, but it's also image captured to trigger you to be able to be used across the board between
yeah,
children, adults, elderly. If you are in crisis mode and you are in pain and you can't think, yeah, you're going to be able to look at the red and go, that's exactly where I am.
yeah. We like the hand. We were going to do a stop sign, but the hand I think is a little more gentle, but it's like you got to stop and think. It was maybe 2 years ago. I was on a busy med surge unit, and there's always 10 or 12 items that you have to do. I think 10 or 12 if you're lucky. It feels like there's hundreds of things you could be doing, and you're just constantly trying to prioritize what's the next thing to do. And I didn't realize it, but you get caught in that loop of busyness. And I had a nurse coach that said, The most important thing that you can do when you're overwhelmed is to stop and count to 10 before you act. And that 10-second pause, right, helps your body reconfigure all the different thoughts in your head and prioritize them differently. And what I did when I had 5 patients, then I started clustering care and I started prioritizing the patient that needed to be seen next based on how important what I had to do for. And I find myself catching up when I'm behind or just being more kind of, I say metered, but just intentional in how I flow. That flow state is optimal because if there's not enough challenge, you get bored. And a lot of nurses, type A people, they get bored if they don't have enough challenge. But when you're over challenged, right, we just get scattered and we kind of lose perception. So we continue down this yellow path, and the last one just talks more about symptoms. And I'm trying to read it on that little page, but it's like seeking support. Oh, wait, that's the one.
Minimal optimism
Yeah,
and able to
able to
self-assess.
self-assess.
And I
Yeah,
think that's where it's really important to remember that what differentiates this from the one before is that you have some self-awareness. You are caring for yourself. You're able to get yourself out of bed. You're
yeah,
able to show up, but you're just needing that peer support, really. And that can look like reaching out to your peers. But I think it's important to know that if your peers are bringing you down or very negative, that getting into a group that really uplifts you and brings in hope and inspiration in whatever it is that you need hope and inspiration in
yeah,
is very important. And
yeah. And
lots of times the nursing units are very negative. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
well, the stickers themselves initiate conversation. And if somebody sees you using it, they're going to ask you what it is. And if you get to share the sticker with someone else, if you found your person, you found your people, because once two people start living or using this assessment, you've initiated this community, and you have a safe person that you can go to. Now, the people that laugh at it, the people that throw it in the trash, they're not your people. And
Mm-hmm.
to you, I mean, if this is not for you, like, I'm glad you found what works for you. Like, we know 100% of the healthcare community is not going to embrace it. All we're saying is this is what's worked for us. It's worked so well for us that we feel compelled to share it. And really, that's been our mission. So once you get through that support, when you start building up and you start getting some momentum, you go to that green. And I feel like green is the first kind of peaceful color in the list because it kind of represents growth. And it just means that you're growing in your skills and boundaries and you're practicing tools to handle stress, conflict, and even that moral injury. But you're building hope. Green is that area where, you may not be good at this. You may be struggling still, but you're starting to crawl at least. You got to crawl before you walk, or maybe you're walking, but you're starting to see where there's parts of your day that you're overcoming, that you're starting to make some improvement, and I think that when the thing I always heard is once you start seeing progress, everyone just really gets more attached and committed to what they're doing. And I think there's nothing more in that cycle or loop, just like than progress.
I think something that's important to say about building hope here, Matt, is that this is a building phase no matter what.
Yeah.
What you are building is your choice. So if you're instilling bad habits, if you've gotten yourself out of crisis mode, you've gotten into a support group, but then you've let all of your basic habits go and you've stopped caring for yourself again, or you've started eating poorly again, or maybe the habits that you're having are drinking a lot to self-soothe rather than talking about it or doing something therapeutic. This is a place that you could also build to build down. And
Yeah.
so if you are teetering and you are kind of between a 3-4 and a 5-6, and you're not really sure, you might be growing, you might be coming out of that 3, 4, but you also might not have the right tools in place. And again, 5, 6 is a great place to make sure to stay in community so that you have some accountability. Continue working with coaches or your professional person that you're working with. Make sure to utilize your tools. And that's why I love the tool as the symbol here,
I
because
love it.
you are building. And I will
Yes.
tell you, I was a little, I guess I still am a tomboy, but I took wood shop in high school. And my teacher, Mr. Robertson, may he rest in peace, he lived and died by saying, you measure twice and you count.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said about being able to self assess, self analyze, and be able to continue to show up and assess yourself today and
Yeah.
tomorrow. Where are you? And something else, I think that Matt and I are passionate about talking about with this is, you might be a 5, 6 showing up as a new grad, you got your tools, you're putting in things, but your home life might also be a 1, 2 in the same day at the same moment. And then your family life, maybe your children's life for the time you spend with your kids is a 7, 8. So it is possible to exist in multiple different areas at once and you're going to be working in multiple different areas at once. And so I just want to say that this can apply in lots of different facets.
I totally agree. Sorry. I was looking to see if we're recording. So the the next area that we talk about is just the growing the skills and the boundaries. Introducing skills for hope. We want to introduce that topic of boundaries. We want you to establish your boundaries. Like, I want you to understand that when we talk about boundaries, we're not trying to tell you what your boundaries are, okay? A lot of the common boundaries we hear about would be like staffing ratios, um, some of the expectations at certain facilities to do mandatory overtime. You hear horror stories of all kinds of manipulations that are being done. And at some point, the best analogy of boundaries I've heard of is that boundaries is like you have a fence in your backyard because there's a time there's a certain point in the yard where my property ends, and it's a protection of what is yours. And really boundaries is about that. And we talk about building hope. We eventually get to this concept of boundaries. And, at some point you have to be able to say no. That's probably the first acknowledgement of a boundary. And I feel like that's one of the things that I've had to personally kind of develop in my own life, where I finally said enough is enough, you know. And
Oftentimes, if you've come from crisis mode, you have set a pretty hard boundary in order to get out of crisis mode. Here in 5 and 6 is where you're practicing that boundary, where you're challenging it, where you're seeing how you're responding to it. And this can look like a lot of different things. It can look like staffing ratios. It can look like contracts. It can look like being pushed for hours. And this is a place that you're just being called to utilize your tools again. Rely on your peer network. Hey, this boundary is being pushed again. Can you help me work through it? Can you listen to me? Can you pray with me? Can you remind me of my tools? Can you remind me why this boundary is important to me?
yeah,
This is the place where you're going to start practicing and utilizing the services and tools that you're putting in your own tool belt.
yeah. The other green box that we have talks about a balanced outlook. Everything's not rosy and perfect. Just because you have a sticker, uh, nothing's changed. I mean, it still sucks. I mean, days are terrible. I can remember uh, patients that took up 4 and 5 hours of my 12-hour shift all at once. And of course, everyone else suffered. And like, uh, I just had to do that because what they needed was that important. Um, and there are occasional setbacks. I admit that in the last 2 weeks, I've probably been every color. And just because I feel like leading with hope today doesn't mean I don't have days of questioning, like what and oh my God, how am I gonna move forward tomorrow? And it's okay. What has happened, and I'll tell you in my own personal life, is it's immediately given me a roadmap for what do I do next? Okay, I feel like shit. Oh, I better call someone, right? Or what boundary did I let go of? Or well, like you end up taking that brief pause and like we self-correct. I don't think I don't think any of us really have lost that sense of like what we need. We know we need to pee. We know we need some water. We know we need to take a break, but we don't always allow ourselves to do it because we think we're sacrificing ourselves for some greater good. And at times, yes, if there's a code blue, you stop everything and you do it. But when you're a red, you never look at yourself and say, I'm a code blue and I need to stop everything else. And in
That's
this,
really powerful, Matt, when you put it like that. And I just want the listeners to take a moment and let that sink in.
thank you.
We think that we're never going to get sick. It's not going to happen to us. And if it does, the right people are going to be there. Everyone else will notice. And truthfully, my entire life I've been surrounded by nurses. I mean, my entire like adult social life, like all of my friends are nurses. Everywhere I turn, all of them are nurses. And when I was crumbling and falling apart, not one of them could see me. And
Yeah.
not one of them could see themselves because we were all just really hurting. And so it's really important for us to gain. And I was somewhat expecting my friends, like you guys need some help. Why aren't you paying attention? But the problem was is none of us are taking care of ourselves and self-assessing. And we think that that you're not worth a code blue until you're actually having a heart attack in 40 years. But the truth of the matter is, what we're trying to teach our patients is to pay attention to their symptoms sooner. And what are we teaching them if we are not paying attention to our own symptoms first and self assessing?
Oh, I love that. I mean, that's one of the things I love about partnering with you is like, uh, I might say something that I like, and then you'll say something I didn't think about. And like that's where the magic I think lies in why the two of us are together is because we might be saying the same thing, but we say it differently. And if I don't reach you, I feel like Ashley will because she just has a different approach to the way she says it.
Yeah. I think, Matt, maybe this is a little fun time to just go in and tell a little bit about ourselves. And
Sure.
maybe not too much, but Matt and I are very, very, very different. We have met each other on social media. Actually, we have yet to meet in person. We will be hugging live at Modern Nurse Fest in Winter
Yes.
Park, Florida, February 24th, 25th, and 26th. And if you're interested in the Florida area or if you get down there, you should come down. Modern Nurse Fest is going to be so cool. And we're going to be speaking there and talking about our hope assessment. And we're going to have hope jars that are sponsoring the festival, which is actually really exciting. But Matt and I are very different. Our nursing experiences are different. The way we approach life is very different. And yet, one of the superpowers I think that we have, which he just said, is we both know this is the way to healing. There's no question. There's no theory like this. This is healing. This is the
Yeah.
pathway to starting to self-assess and heal.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. I can tell you I've told my story before and people they tell me how cool it is or whatnot, but all I know is that's how life happened. I grew up in a pretty conservative, normal home, whatever, and I went to college. I studied to be a minister. I worked at one of the largest churches in America, as a research assistant. So I'm kind of a nerd. I think I'm definitely a nerd. But after that experience, I went and started my own church and I hated it. And I had like I didn't have a heart attack, but I think I had a really bad panic attack. And the church I worked at had a ministry to these people with like intellectual disabilities. and I really enjoyed working with them. And I had the opportunity with a couple friends to work for Adult Protective Services. And so I left ministry for APS, and I got to investigate some really bad people. And the one lady we rescued, she was in a mobile home, and her body was decaying while she was alive. If anybody's ever staged a wound, uh, her decubitus went from her the front of her pelvic area to the back. It was a through and through kind of wound. We found her like that with mayonnaise jars covered in bugs, and like every home health nurse probably knows, like the worst of the worst you could ever expect to see when you open the door. So we called 911. We were there in the emergency room. We followed her in the ICU. She lived. She ended up on a med surg unit and ended up going to a rehab unit. And then at the very end of it, we helped her transition into a assisted living. And to just see her go through the whole healthcare system, and I finally saw what nurses actually did. I said, that's what I want to do. And I enrolled in nursing school. And that was it. My first 10 years was in a psych hospital as a staff member, and it was 120 bed, like 12 different units. And I worked from peds to we had an adult schizophrenic unit, affective disorders we called it, and we also had addictions, two addictions unit. Um, we had a psychiatric intensive care unit, and we had a psych unit that was just focused on intractable pain. And I had the privilege of just working every single one of those units. And then I went and became a resource nurse through that, and transitioned to med surg. I had done some ER, PCU. It was at that time that I started to realize some of the corruption inside the hospital, and they were breaking the law. And you know, I had reached out to some people I knew in the attorney general's office, and was questioning some things about the CEO and even the chief nursing officer. And uh, a lot of my peers just didn't believe me, but they didn't realize it. It took like 9 years for the investigation to go public, and that hospital was like fined like $80 million and things like that. But I left that
Matt,
hospital. What?
can I interject? I just want to tell the listeners that I think we should do in a whole episode one day dedicated to all the ways that you've stood up and kind of made a stink. I think we could easily kill an hour. This man is someone who advocates. He advocates fiercely for what is right. And if you're not getting that from what he's saying, because it's obvious in there, but he really truly is someone who sees something that's wrong and fights for nurses and for what's right and stands up for patients. And I do want to highlight that in what you're saying right here. So maybe one day down the road, we'll do an episode where it's all the different ways that you stood up
Yeah,
against some of the scary suits.
thank you. Well, I left that institution thinking they're corrupt. I got to go somewhere else. And I ended up working for another company, and I don't like naming names, but this company's nationwide, and this was during COVID. And I'm on a med surge unit, and they're having all that COVID diarrhea, and all the managers are working from home. And it's like a Saturday or something, and I go to the supply room, and there's no briefs. So how am I supposed to manage this diarrhea if I don't have supplies? Additionally, I'm trying to print out an after visit summary, and there's no printer paper in the printer. So I've got a problem solved. But I go to the cabinet where paper is supposed to be, and it's empty. And I kind of just lose my mind. And I call the manager of that unit, and I'm like, "We don't have supplies. Like, aren't you in charge of supplies?" And she's like, "Well, have you talked to so and so?" I talked to the PCC. I've talked, like, "No, this is your unit. Like, why don't you have control of your unit?" And she's like, "Well, what's missing?" I said, "Briefs." And she's like, "Well, what else?" And I said, "Paper." I was like, "You don't even have office products. Like, how am I supposed to educate a patient on their discharge if I can't print out the paper. And she's like, well, I haven't been in the office in 2 months. And I'm like, I don't care, you know? And I ended up having to leave that organization. When you talk about advocating, that's when I really found out I was powerless because I went to every department inside the hospital, the patient experience, all my manager, the vice president. I went to everybody inside the organization. I filed complaints with corporate compliance, and like everyone knew who I was. I just didn't care. I'm like, this is wrong. What you're doing to patients is neglect. So I called the Attorney General's office, because that's what I do. They know me. They probably don't like me, but I don't care. I'm talking to a rep, an attorney with the Attorney General's office, and they're saying, I don't have a law on the book to support this. And I said, I was an APS investigator. Yes, you do. You have abuse, neglect, and exploitation. They're accepting Medicare, Medicaid dollars. That's Medicaid fraud. You can talk to the investigator there. I said, they've all taken the hospital's taken on this responsibility of care, and they're dropping the ball. Like that's neglect. And I go through the whole thing, and the attorney's like, the actual attorney general has no will of doing this. And it's like I just remembered in the back of my head how much power like the American Hospital Association has. And it's like when you think about the dollars that are being spent, it kind of just frustrates you. So my resignation letter kind of read like a manifesto where I just told them how wrong they were and how my name can't be associated with it anymore. And then I did resource for a couple other places, and then now I had an assault last year that led to a TIA, and now I work on a OCMED office in another state. And I have been so burnt out, and I've been so frustrated, and I've pounded my head against every single wall inside and even outside of the healthcare system now. And I've talked to my state and my local representatives, my senators, my representatives. I've sent letters to the president and vice president and the different federal people, and like I get responses, but I can't really say anything's changed. And what I will say is, when it comes to advocacy, you have one voice, and if you don't use it, then it's silent, right? But the only way to amplify that voice is to come together in community and have more voices with you. And the second is to have money. And I think when you talk about the $5 trillion healthcare industry, it's hard for one individual to stand against that. That's me today.
I think Matt, you had some really great things in your introduction there, and it's just the healthcare system is a monster right now, and I think everyone feels crumbled by it. Everyone feels pressured by it. Everyone feels taken advantage by it. And what Matt and I are here to tell you, we get it, and we're fighting it, and we're doing those things. But the business of hope is not about the healthcare. The business of hope is about you as an individual. How are you caring for yourself despite the system? How are you caring for yourself without giving too much to the system? How are you setting boundaries? And one thing we get a lot of pushback from, and I hear it all over social media, and something that Matt is so good at encouraging others to do, is when you advocate, if you're fearful of losing your job, or you're fearful of pushing back, you're fearful that it's not going to change, to do it anyway. To do it anyways, that the outcome is you really have no idea. You really have no idea, and lots of things can change and do change. But we cannot address the system and make a positive impact. We're not taking care of ourselves first.
Yes.
And that is where the hope assessment comes in. It's not about how is the healthcare system showing up today. How much money did they make? Who budgeted? Who bonus? No, 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 no. This hope assessment is how are you showing up today? And what are you capable of doing? Because we can't make a change in the healthcare system until we are all living about right here.
Hopefully in the blue, right?
Yes. Yes, which actually kind of brings us full circle. So Matt and I want to be clear. We have both been experienced all of these. I sometimes experience all of these in a single day.
Yeah.
But the goal is to genuinely live your life in a healthy place. And the goal here, we say the gold standard is 7, 8. 9, 10 is a little bit over exaggerated, but I think if you really can shoot to be in a 7, 8 place, which Matt, I'll let you go in and tell everyone about that a little bit more here. But the goal really is, as we talk about this, that you live more days
Yeah.
in a 7, 8. And over time, I have been. I spent years in 1, 2, 3, 4. And I truly, truly, I've been recording, I've been documenting, I've been tracking myself. I am in a solid 7, 8, some days a 5 stretch, but really, this is for me. And it is possible to move up and grow in here. So go ahead, Matt. I'll let you take over there.
We just talk about stable and growing. We feel like that stability is just like that representation of peace, and calm. And whatever's happening around you is different than what's happening inside you. And one of the ways I like to describe it is the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. When you go home and you check your heat or your air, you set the temperature. Like you say, I want 70 degrees. And if it's too hot, the air conditioner kicks in and it brings the temperature down where you want it. And if it's too low, the heater will bring it up. A lot of times people tell me, you made me feel. And I like to break those kinds of things down. And I'm just a geek about this stuff, but it's like nobody has the power or control over you to make you feel anything. Okay. You're giving them that power when you say that. And uh, however you feel about that, hearing about it is up to you. But you know, because of this circumstances, this is how you've either been patterned to respond or how you're choosing to respond. Being a victim, I believe, is a choice. Okay. And at some point, you have to kind of say, I'm not my circumstances. Now, you have a choice inside those circumstances, but it goes back to that conversation about boundaries in those circumstances. You have the choice to stay, you have the choice to leave, but the third choice, if you stay, right, is to stay with boundaries. And for me, like that's what I'm trying to push is like, even if you're in an unhealthy environment, you can be healthy, you know, and your example could lead to somebody else's health. So really, when we talk about that, it's being stable, consistent. You're moving towards those personal and even professional loads, even when work's hard. Okay. And the other one is in the middle, we talk about just being consistent and then persistence. Yeah. You're building hope. You're using your skills and you're advancing toward your own personal goals. And I honestly, after COVID, we had 1 million nurses leave the healthcare profession. And we want this to be helpful to those people that left. And a lot of people are like, how do we get them back? And what should we do? And I don't even know if that's the healthy, right choice. I mean, the people that left, I'm happy for you. I just hope that in leaving, you've been able to find your stable and growth position because stress, while it may not be as great as it was inside healthcare, will still follow you, whatever career and job you find. Okay. So for those of you who left, I feel like we should celebrate it because leaving healthcare is just a choice. It's not a right or a wrong thing. Staying in healthcare and allowing all of this to just keep you pushed down into crisis mode is probably the worst of the three choices. And I think for those of you who are in it, it's like at some point, I think you just need to have the grace with yourself to just admit you're vulnerable and work toward becoming that stable, uh, purposeful individual. And that's where the last one talks about positive mindset with maybe more rare setbacks. Now, the amount of setbacks is determined by the circumstances, maybe, but your response to the circumstances. I'd like to say, life is not about what happened to you because everyone can share a trauma or an experience or an event. And a lot of times when you get nurses together, when they start talking about their history, they try to out trauma each other. I've seen trauma. I've been involved. It's affected me. I'm sure Ashley has too. And if I do share a personal story, it's usually for a purpose. It's not just shock value. It's not just well, you saw this. Well, let me tell you what I saw. Because there's just no benefit in that. Stable and growing is just that place where you're kind of in that flow state and you're optimizing your position and your opportunities. So Ashley, you haven't shared about your past, and tell us more about where you came from, where you're at today.
Um, this will seem very planned, and it's not. So I just want to say thank you because it's a great segue. But here in the 7-8, this last little column, the rare setbacks is what I have found determines how I'm showing up that day. And this is how I know if I'm like a 5-6 or a 7-8. And it's honestly when I think about, okay, if the worst thing happened to me today, is that going to crumble me or am I going to be able to get up and deal with it? And some days, if you're middle-aged woman out there dealing with hormones, sometimes it's just a matter of where are my hormones at today and how much can I handle. But the how you show up to setbacks is probably one of the most telling ways that I knew that something was wrong. So
Yeah.
I will give a little bit about myself. I am a published author. My book, Just a Nurse, it actually does talk all about my history and kind of journey into nursing. I come from a complicated childhood. I was parentified very young. I took on a lot of responsibility. I went into nursing as a means to get out of a really bad situation. I failed out of nursing school the first time, kept going. After a couple of years in a cardiac ICU, I mean, I landed right in the intensity of it all too, at a trauma hospital. And after 2 years of that, I was kind of doubting what is healing. And I wanted to go to massage therapy school. The opportunity came up for me to travel, and I went and traveled. And I think at the time, I don't know that I was consciously looking, but I was looking to see how the rest of the world healed, how the rest of the nation healed. And I thought it had to be different than what we were doing here in my ICU on the East Coast. And as I traveled the country, which I spent 9 years doing, I realized that it is the same everywhere. And not only is the care and the protocols and the medications the same, the neglect of its own healthcare workers is the same at every hospital. And I felt that grumbling all the way up until COVID. I worked frontlines COVID in Arizona and unfortunately suffered severe complex PTSD that had caught up to me from not dealing with things. And I had fractured my spine, which made it impossible for me to work at the bedside. And so, along with going through this trauma that was just kind of, I mean, volcanoing out of me, I was just spewing hate, resentment, trauma, tragedy, everything from the day I was born all the way through this ICU career that I had maintained for 15 years, on top of having an injured back. And that is where the pain I turned into words and put it all down. And I could feel the healthcare system was crumbling during COVID, and it all just kind of hit me. And I lived suicidal, calculating, financially planning, like just calmly knowing that I had no purpose and I wasn't going to be able to go on, um, just wanting to leave a book. And I gradually worked my way out of crisis mode. And a few years later, I can say that I am a successful self empowerment coach. I am working on my next book. Matt and I are writing this book and helping others find hope again. because
Yeah.
it's not just hope in healthcare. It's not just hope, you know, in politics or a better tomorrow or world peace. I mean, sometimes we need to wake up and just realize that we need hope to make it to the end of the day. And there's a lot of different ways that we can support each other to get there.
Yeah.
So I
That's
love
a
what we have
beautiful
created
story.
here.
Yeah. I'm just blown away by your story. And I just feel, as much as I think we felt we always felt betrayed by the healthcare system. And like we thought we thought all that effort that we were putting into our patients, if we ever needed it, we were going to receive it. And I think we just don't. And
We don't now. And when you look down the road, there's no possible way that nurses are going to be able to care for themselves well enough to care for me. When I need a nurse to help me get out of bed in 30 years, there, who is it going to be?
yeah,
The nurses now can't make it more than a couple of years. They're so burned out. They're so stressed. They're not able to be kind. And that's not who I want holding my hand.
no. And there's people, I think, families do the best they can, but there's people that don't have families and they don't have friends that'll visit them in the hospital. And um, I feel there's a lot of those issues that go on. But that's the big thing I got from what I heard you saying is that the healthcare system wasn't there for you. It didn't show up for you in the way that you showed up for it. I think there's when we talk about the moral injury or burnout, the different things they call it, but the reason why it's a certain type of person, I think it's because these people that care more, the more that we've given, we're the ones that suffer more because that's kind of our thought process is like, why doesn't this system care as much as I do? And you know, there's a real issue because the strike in New York is happening right now,
Yes,
and
right now.
I just pray for those nurses. But like one of the big discussions is like the three CEOs of the hospital make almost $50 million, and they broke it down to that was like $72,000 a day. And it's the same hospital systems that are saying, we can't afford to have one more nurse on the unit, and we can't, things like that. And
And one nurse does not cost $7,200 a day.
no, 72,000.
Oh, you know how many nurses you could get 7,200 nurses. You could
Yeah,
get more than that.
right.
You could start a whole new hospital.
Yeah. And it's just in my research, one of the saddest things that I discovered is they have these states where nurses form unions. And I think people think just because you're in a union state that you're going to have a better uh, contract. But the research that I found said there's no significant difference between the states that have unions and the states that don't. I find that crushing. Uh, and I feel like, you have to state that you're planning to strike. You file paperwork ahead of time. And so, I mean, that's why they have staffing plans in place and whatnot. But I just feel, and as
Feel,
much as the
feel.
system hurts, I think, I think the system, the, I don't feel like unit managers are making these terrible choices. I don't even think directors and chief nursing officers. What's sad too is, the there's a guy who's studying the finance behind budgeting, right? And as much as the chief nursing officer in the hospital represents the full spectrum of nursing, right? They have nothing to do with the finance and the budgetary uh, expectations of these nurses. They are given budgets and they are expected to work within them. But there's no like meeting that they're involved with the actual financials. So it's a struggle. I feel like the executives would be like the CEOs would know, and really the board members are the ones that understand the savviness of the business. And what I don't think people realize that the average hospital, large hospital system, right, has a business model that is more complex than some of your Fortune 100 companies. And inside that nonprofit organization are for-profit entities that are feeding that organization more money than any revenue from insurance companies would ever provide them. And the sophisticated business models that exist inside of healthcare are way beyond um, what exists. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to businesses that want to donate money to hospitals because once they see the actual spreadsheets of how successful that hospital is doing, they find that the hospital is making more money than the company that's wanting to donate the money. And
I
this was in California with the company Mattel. Like that's mind blowing when you think about what's actually happening. And they have venture capital inside these hospital systems where they just invest money into making money, and they make billions of dollars. And those dollars go not just to the CEO, he's just the active board member, but every board member, because it's privately held. It's not held by um, stockholders. The companies is held by those individuals. So anyway, I don't think that a lot of nurse managers and directors realize that there are nurses working on their units who actually understand the business model that's totally screwing them. And when you try as a bedside nurse to educate a manager or a director of just how screwed they personally are being by the system, they have a hard time understanding it. And, we're all together trying to build this system, but it's not the fault of those leaders. They haven't made the choices. They are living inside the choices that are ruining healthcare. So I think a lot of times it's a misguided, and I've been guilty of that. It's a misguided finger pointing, but the board, the board of directors and the CEO are know exactly what they're doing. So,
Well, as you guys can see, Matt is a world of wealth over there and knowledge. And so we're going to be diving into more of these topics and diving in about how we can inject hope into the system. And it really starts with injecting hope into ourselves. Because as you can see, we cannot change a system, we cannot change shareholders, we cannot change the back end of things. But what we can change is our health and the way we are showing up. And once we are stronger and collectively healing, we can begin to truly change the system.
so we've got a few more minutes. I think we should just talk about what we're going to be doing in the next few months. We already mentioned Modern Nurse Fest. We're going to be live in the flesh, basically, for 3 days in February. And that's what is it, 24th, 25th, 26th?
Uh-huh.
That's in Orlando. What's it called? Winter Park, Florida.
Yep,
But
Winter Park, Florida.
it's modernnursefest.org now, if
Mm-hmm.
you want to go see the tickets. We have a mission to create some support groups. We're looking at some opportunities to do that online, but we hope to be announcing some groups hopefully in March, maybe April. Um, but we're wanting to be kind of transparent about the process of what we're going through. And Ashley and I have written a book, and it's been a process. And I feel like when you write a book, you're just never happy. And like we're doing it in depth on chapter 3, and we got to this point where it's like she'd say something, I'd say something. And we really feel like we're finally in this like flow. And it's just, I don't know. We just keep wanting to perfect it. And it's like at some point we're just going to have to do it. But the process is, we're trying to be open about the process. And we're going to be looking for a literary agent pretty soon. We've kind of put that on the back burner just to get through Modern Nurse Fest, but then we want to find that. So, um, what
And to
else
get
are
our
we?
podcast up and started.
On this podcast, we want to do a monthly podcast, and we're gonna do a live podcast from Modern Nurse Fest. We're so excited, and all the people that are going there. And then I don't know, every time we have updates, we'll be there. On the website, there's a contact us spot where you can join our mailing list, and the emails you'll get are just about our updates as well. What else do you think? Did I miss anything?
No, I think we covered a ton of ground today.
Yeah, and I just hope there's someone out there that this is going to be beneficial for. Like I said, that it helped us, and we just want to bring one more person, that might benefit. Buy the stickers. If you're at Modern Nurse Fest, we're going to be handing out stickers, but that's it.
That's it. All right. Well, thank you for spending your time with us today. Get your sticker online, print out at the very least our PDF, and just check in on yourself. Where are you coming in at today? All right. Have a blessed day. Take
All
care,
right.
guys.
Thank you all. Bye.